Hey guys, welcome to the channel. If you like this video, please like and subscribe down below. Today we have a couple of vintage watches, and I wanted to concentrate on the Omega Seamaster 300, which is one of the straight lugged trilogy that Omega came out with in 1957. So today in the middle we have Omega Seamaster reference 14755. On the right we have Omega Speedmaster reference 105.003, and on the left we have Omega Railmaster reference 135.004. This Omega Seamaster was one of my first vintage watches, mainly because I fell in love with the newer updated version in 2014 from Baselworld. Omega re-released the Omega Seamaster 300, which was vintage inspired. Its straight lugged liquid metal bezel and 369 dial was very appealing to me. I enjoyed the newer version quite a bit and sought the vintage one out. We are not talking about the Omega Seamaster Professional today, which is what was made famous by James Bond in the 1990s. Omega tried to keep up with Rolex in the 1930s and 40s with a waterproof watch. Their first one was the Omega Master Marine, but this subsequently turned out to be Omega Seamaster in 1948. It was brought out for Omega's 100th anniversary. It was the first watch to have a rubber O gasket, which was highly important as this increased the water depth rating, but also it was able to withstand much temperature variation which other watches could not. Rolex brought out the Submariner in the early 1950s, and Omega introduced their sport line in 1957 with three watches: Omega Seamaster 300, Omega Speedmaster, and Omega Railmaster. Looking at these watches, you can see the resemblance to other Rolex sport models. The Seamaster would compete with the Rolex Submariner. The Speedmaster would compete with what would be known as the Rolex Daytona eventually, and the Railmaster would compete with Rolex's Milgauss. This Seamaster had a bakelite bezel, which is a precursor to plastic, but was very fragile, and most Seamaster vintage watches have lost the bakelite bezel. This is a reproduction. This is in comparison to the Speedmaster, which has a painted aluminum/steel bezel, and the Railmaster, which has a plain bezel. We also see that the lume markers are a very nice color on the Seamaster, because this is a radium dial, a dial which was highly radioactive and was subsequently changed to tritium, which was less radioactive. Radium was probably not harmful to the wearers of the watches, but was highly harmful for those working in the industry, those painting the dials, such as the radium girls of the 1930s, who had major health problems from using this highly luminescent radioactive paint. On closer inspection, we see that we have Omega logo that is printed. We see that the very vintage appearance of the Omega logo. Seamaster 300 is at the bottom of the dial, and it's kind of ironic because this is a 1961 14755, and the depth rating officially put out by Omega was actually 200 meters and not 300. They said that the variation was because diving limitations of equipment and not the watch at the time. We can see the reproduction bezel. The lume spot at 12 o'clock has been redone. I am a big fan of the 3, 6, 9, and 12 dial. It makes for a clean and symmetric appearing watch. The hour and minute hands are also radium. We see that the arrow hand of the minute marker is quite nice. The first reference, CK2913, had a broad arrow hand for the hour marker, and with the change to 14755, this changed to a smaller arrow. Later references would have hands sort of like that seen on the Railmaster. This watch has seen some polish, as we can see by the lugs, high polished in front. It's brushed on the sides. The bezel is fairly marked up and high polished as well. The crystal is a replacement, as the original crystal would have the Omega logo etched right in the middle. The dial has seen some spotting, which is likely due to moisture over time, but since this was a diver's watch, I think that can be expected. The back of the watch has the hippocampus logo that Omega Seamasters are famous for. Also etched is the Omega logo. This is a screwback case back. Opening up the case back, we can see the rubber O gasket that made it famous. Also caliber 552 with its serial number engraved. This is an automatic movement with sweep seconds hands. Its diameter is approximately 27.9 millimeters. Its height 4.5 millimeters. It has 24 joules, and you can see that it's still beating quite strong at 19,800 beats per hour. Rough power reserve for this watch is approximately 50 hours. The Omega Seamaster wears quite nice on my 6-inch wrist, mainly because of its 39 millimeter diameter. It has a 20 millimeter lug width, and the black slate strap is from Worn and Wound. This has very nice patina and is very charismatic vintage watch. There are some imperfections, however, I get compliments on this watch quite frequently. And this is the watch that has started my vintage watch collecting. I subsequently got the straight-lugged Speedmaster and the straight-lugged Railmaster and completed the holy trinity of Omega straight-lug vintage sport models. I think our time here is done today. Thanks for logging on and watching the video. If you have any comments down below, I'll be happy to address them. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. We have the Railmaster to still do for the trilogy.